So we're going to set up for the radiation lab. So the first thing I'm going to do is add it to my table of contents. So this is our 9th lab, and this is the radiation lab. And let's go look at my pages. The types of elements lab ended on page 26. So the radiation lab is going to start on page 27. So I'm going to start with writing the title at the top. So this is Radiation Lab. And we're going to write the date for this one. So the date for this lab, whenever you do it, but it will likely be around January 19th, 2017. So the first thing that we're going to write is our purpose. Now, the purpose of this lab is simply to explore radiation. So that's what we're going to put. The purpose is to explore radiation. For our hypothesis, since this lab is going to be a little bit different, this is really just an exploratory gathering information lab. Instead of our typical prediction hypothesis, instead, I want you to just write a couple sentences about what you already know about radiation or what you think you might know about radiation. So just write a couple of things. It doesn't have to be a lot. And then when you're done with that, you can go ahead and put in your procedure. So I'm going to cut mine. So for our hypothesis, I'm just going to write a note. What you already know about radiation. So again, not our typical hypothesis, but that's okay. This isn't our typical type of lab. And then we're going to put in our procedure. So I cut off part of mine just to save some space. So I'm going to glue this in. There we go. And then I have the other part of my procedure that I need to glue in, the part that I cut off. Okay, and then I'm going to have observations. And then you're going to leave some space. And now for our data table, so we're going to have kind of a different data table for each part. So for procedure 1, we're going to collect radiation data at 3 different locations. So I'm going to say data table, and then I'm going to do location, and then so we're going to measure radiation in counts. So we'll record number of counts per 1 minute. We're going to do that for 3 different locations. And then I'm going to label this one as part 1, because that's for procedure 1. For procedure 2, we're going to record counts when it's 10 seconds away from the detector, when the sample is 10 seconds away from the detector. So we're going to have our sample, and we're going to have counts. And then that's for part 2. And then for part 3, we're going to measure it at different distances. And again, we're going to measure counts per minute. So we're going to say distance, and then we'll do counts. And that one might need to be more rows, that's fine. You can add more rows if you need more rows for that one. And that's for part 3. And then for part 4, we're going to have 3 different shielding materials, and then we're going to have counts. So we'll have material and counts. And that's for part 4. Not the prettiest data tables in the world, but they work. They organize our data for us. Now, after our data tables, we don't have any graphs for this lab, so then after our data tables, we're going to glue in the second part of our handouts, and that has our data analysis, and then I'm actually going to cut the summary part off and put that at the end. So this has the data, this is the data analysis part. And then you'll want to leave space to answer these questions. So there are actually quite a few questions. There are 3 for procedure 1, there's 2 questions for procedure 2, 1 for 3, and 2 questions for procedure 4. So you're going to answer all of these questions in your lab notebook. So I'm going to go ahead and save a whole nother page. And then on here, this is actually page 31, I'm going to put in my summary. I'm going to trim this just a little bit more. Now, our summary for this lab is going to be a little bit different. Since we had a non-typical hypothesis, we're going to have a non-typical summary. So instead of your normal 6-sentence summary paragraph, I just want you to write 6 to 10 sentences describing what you learned about radiation from this experiment. So our hypothesis was, what did we think we already knew about radiation? And then as our summary, I want you to write what you learned from this experiment about radiation.